The great conclave chamber of the Glypton Imperium was a space carved from silence and gravity. Light did not merely illuminate it. It was bent and sculpted by the immense mass of the throne world, its rays falling in solid, geometric pillars through the cavernous dark. Here, where the very fabric of spacetime was a deliberate architectural choice, the assembled sentience of the galactic concordance shimmered and resonated with a profound, unified dread. Elder Xylos, first voice of the Glypton tetrarchy, rested his multipartite limbs upon the cool obsidian plinth before him, his crystalline mind processing the torrent of data that flowed through the noospheric link. The data was a quiet scream that had been echoing across the star lanes for cycles, a tide of devouring static known only as the Scourge. It was a force of cosmic hunger, a swarm of self-replicating biomechanical locusts that stripped systems bare, leaving behind nothing but cold, dead worlds and the lingering whispers of gravitational decay. The Scourge was a known horror, a predictable if unstoppable equation of galactic death. But today, the dread in the chamber was not for the known. It was for the unknown. Before the assembled delegates, the incandescent, gaseous forms of the Lumina Ascendancy, the faceted, silent Xylan Hierophants, the myriad other beings of thought and form that constituted the concordance, a holographic display held the focus of every mind. It was a tactical projection of the Veil Nebula, a frontier territory now boiling with the Scourge's advance. The swarm was a chaotic fractal stain, a crimson tide of countless entities. Yet piercing this tide, moving against its inexorable current, was a single, impossible point of light. It was a ship, a warship of some kind, judging by the incandescent blossoms of energy it discharged, each one erasing a swathe of the Scourge with an elegance that defied the raw, brutal physics of conventional warfare. The ship was a sliver of polished obsidian and cold starlight, its design a seamless, flowing geometry that was utterly alien to every known shipbuilding tradition in the galaxy. It bore no registry, broadcast no identification, and its energy signature was a paradox that made the Concordance's finest astrometricians question their sanity. It radiated the power of a dwarf star, yet its heat signature was that of the void itself. It moved with impossible grace, executing maneuvers that should have torn its own structure apart through sheer inertial stress, yet it remained pristine, a perfect, solitary scalpel cutting through a galactic cancer. The anomaly persists. Xylos's voice resonated not through the air, but as a direct, deep vibration from the plinth, a tone that carried the weight of ages. It engages the Scourge at the periphery of the Cygnus arm. Its effectiveness is undeniable. The advance of the Scourge in that sector has been blunted, halted even, but we are no closer to understanding its origin or intent. A shimmering column of light, the delegate of the Lumina Ascendancy, pulsed with agitated wavelengths. Origin is the fulcrum of this crisis, Elder. Our deep archives contain no vessel of this configuration. Our quantum entanglement probes return nothing. It is a ghost, a phantom that wages a war it has no stake in. We have hailed it on all frequencies across all spectra. There is no reply, only silence and the calm, methodical destruction of the Scourge. From the far side of the chamber, a Xylan Hierophant, a towering crystalline being whose thoughts manifested as chimes of pure logic, offered its cold assessment. The vessel's operational pattern is not random. It prioritizes the defense of star systems with nascent, presapient life. It has ignored barren worlds to defend those with complex biospheres. This suggests an ethical framework, a purpose beyond mere territorial defense. But whose purpose? And what is the nature of a power that can manifest such a weapon without a trace of its creation? The debate had raged for days, a storm of speculation and fear. The ship was a weapon of immense power, and in the calculus of galactic politics, unaccounted-for power was the most dangerous variable of all. Some feared it was a precursor to an invasion from a hidden, extragalactic power. Others theorized it was an automated weapon left over from a long-dead civilization, a forgotten sentinel awakened by the Scourge. But the most unsettling data point, the one that Xylos kept returning to in the silent depths of his own thoughts, was its designation. The Concordance's intelligence directorate, unable to find any official name, had given it a code name born of their own frustration and disbelief. They called it the Phantasma. But among the lower-level analysts, the ones who stared at the impossible sensor readings day after day, it had acquired a different, more poetic and far more terrifying name, the warship that was never built. For every search of every cons, Truction Yard database, every historical record, every trade manifest in the known galaxy came back empty. A warship of this scale would leave a footprint, a history of mined resources, of technological development, of assembly and launch. This ship had none. It simply existed, fighting a war at the edge of their space, a perfect, impossible fact. And then a new piece of information had arrived, so staggering in its implications that Xylos had ordered the conclave into a sealed session. A deep-range archaeolinguistic probe, tasked with sifting through the faint, residual quantum signatures around the vessel, had found something. A fleeting, fragmentary echo. It was not a transmission, but something more akin to a faint scent on the cosmic wind, a residual artifact of its impossible engine. The echo contained data fragments, language, the language of a species catalogued by the concordance as primitive. A young race confined to their home world and its immediate satellites, barely post-industrial, certainly not capable of interstellar travel, let alone the construction of a weapon that could challenge the scourge. The species was known as human. Humans, the Lumina delegate pulsed, its light dimming to a deep violet of contempt and suspicion. A bipedal, carbon-based species from a minor world in an uncharted sector. Their own world is rife with internal conflict, their technology laughably crude. They transmit radio waves into the void, polluting their own system with primitive entertainment and political squabbles. The notion that they could be responsible for this vessel, is beyond absurdity. It is an insult to reason. Reason is but a tool to interpret the observable, the Xylan Hierophant chimed, its crystalline form rotating slowly. The observation is this: the vessel exists, the linguistic echo is human. The logical conclusion, however improbable, is that there is a connection. Perhaps they are not the builders, but the inspiration. A more advanced race could be acting as their protector for reasons unknown. Xylos felt a coldness spread through his silicon-based consciousness. A protector? That was a comforting thought, but it did not align with the ship's solitary, almost lonely presence. It felt singular, absolute. He had watched the recordings of its engagements for hours, mesmerized by its silent, deadly ballet. It did not fight with rage or fury, as was the way of most warrior cultures. It fought with a kind of profound, weary precision, as if performing a grim but necessary duty. It was the movement of a surgeon, not a soldier. It was this emotional resonance, this feeling of deep, abiding purpose, that troubled him more than its firepower. What kind of civilization could produce a weapon that felt sad? The humans cannot have built this ship, Xylos finally vibrated, his voice calming the agitated energy in the chamber. Our long-range observations of their planet, Earth, confirm their technological state. They have not yet unified their own world, let alone mastered fusion, gravity manipulation, or the higher dimensional physics required for a vessel like the Phantasma. To them, we would be gods, and yet the evidence points to them. He paused, letting the weight of the paradox settle over the conclave. We are facing two possibilities, both of them unsettling. The first is that we are being deceived, that a powerful, unknown entity is using the signature of a primitive species as a cloak for its own activities. The second, he continued, his internal thoughts spiraling around the sheer impossibility, is that our understanding of the humans is fundamentally, catastrophically wrong. The silence that followed was heavier than the planet's gravity. The assembled minds of the concordance, beings who had navigated the complexities of galactic diplomacy for millennia, who had witnessed the birth and death of stars, were confronted with a problem that did not compute. A weapon that should not exist, attributed to a people who could not have built it, fighting a war for reasons they could not fathom. The warship moved through the Veil Nebula, a beautiful, terrifying enigma, and with every burst of its weapons it carved not only a path through the scourge, but also a hole in the fabric of their understanding of the universe. Xylos felt a tremor of something he had not experienced in centuries, a genuine, profound fear of the unknown. The scourge was a monster, they understood. But this silent, graceful ship, this warship that was never built, it was a mystery. And mysteries, he knew, were often far more dangerous than monsters. He authorized the dispatch of the Concordance's premier diplomatic vessel, the unwavering Inquiry Asterisk, to the edge of the Veil Nebula. It would not go armed for war, but for dialogue. It would approach the Phantom ship, and it would transmit a single, simple message, translated into the crude mathematics and radio frequencies of the human species. We seek under our standing. For Xylos knew, with a certainty that chilled him to his core, that the future of the galaxy might not depend on who won the war with the scourge, but on the answer they received from the impossible ship. The journey of the unwavering inquiry was a silent, tense pilgrimage through the void. The Glypton vessel was a masterpiece of concordance engineering, a craft designed not for battle, but for the awesome task of representing the combined will of 1,000 worlds. Its corridors were vast, silent chambers, its crew a carefully selected cadre of the Concordance's most skilled diplomats, linguists, and xenopsychologists. At its command was emissary Kalen, a Glypton of venerable age and experience, his mind a repository of countless first-contact protocols. He stood on the observation deck, a transparent dome of armored crystal that looked out upon the stardusted tapestry of space, his thoughts as deep and quiet as the void itself. The Veil Nebula loomed ahead, a swirling cloud of incandescent gas and dark matter, a place of birth and death for stars. And within it the ghost awaited them. Their sensors detected it long before it was visible. The paradoxical signature, a wellspring of immense power that radiated no discernible heat, a gravitational distortion with no corresponding mass. It was like observing a hole in the laws of physics. As they drew closer, it resolved into a visual image on their main screen, the same sleek obsidian vessel from the tactical projections. It was drifting, motionless, amidst a graveyard of scourge wreckage. The chaotic, jagged forms of the destroyed biomechanical husks stood in stark contrast to the ship's smooth, unbroken perfection. It was pristine, as if it had just emerged from its construction dock, the very dock that did not exist. "We are within communication range, emissary," a subordinate's voice chimed through the bridge's internal comms. "The vessel is holding its position. It seems to be waiting for us." Kalen felt his crystalline structure vibrate with a low thrum of anticipation. Waiting. The word implied awareness, intent. This was no automated sentinel. There was a mind aboard that ship. Open a channel, all frequencies, as ordered by the Elder. Broadcast the prepared message. No overtures of power, no diplomatic posturing, just the simple request for dialogue. The message was sent, a pulse of radio waves encoded with the universal language of mathematics, prime numbers, the hydrogen spectral line, and then the translated human phrase, repeated in their most common dialects, gleaned from their own primitive broadcasts. "We come in peace. We seek understanding." For a long, stretched moment, there was only silence. The obsidian ship remained motionless, silent, impassive. Kalen watched, his mind cycling through 100 different contingency plans. Would it attack, flee, simply ignore them? The tension on the bridge was a palpable force, a pressure that seemed to thicken the recycled atmosphere. The crew, a diverse mix of concordant species, remained perfectly still at their stations, their attention locked on the view screen. And then, a response. Not on the radio frequencies they had used, but through a direct, high-bandwidth quantum entanglement channel that sliced through their ship's firewalls as if they were not there. It was not an aggressive intrusion. It was a precise, clean connection, established with an effortless mastery of technology that was centuries beyond the Concordance's own capabilities. A shiver of awe and fear went through Kalen. This was the technology of a transcendent civilization. A voice spoke. It was not a sound, but a pure data stream, translated instantly by the ship's computers into the Glypton conceptual language. The voice was calm, measured, and carried a profound, almost unimaginable weariness. It was devoid of aggression, of pride, of any of the emotional markers Kalen was trained to detect. It was the voice of a being who had seen too much. "This is the Temporary Autonomous Unit Vigilance. We acknowledge your transmission, emissary of the Galactic Concordance. Your request for dialogue is granted." Kalen struggled to maintain his composure. The name itself was a puzzle. Vigilance, a name of purpose, and Temporary Autonomous Unit, it sounded so functional, so detached. "This is Emissary Kalen of the Unwavering Inquiry Asterisk. We are grateful for your response. We have many questions. Your presence here, your actions against the Scourge, they are a mystery to us. Your vessel's design is unknown to our registries." "That is because it has no registry, emissary. In the strictest sense, this vessel does not exist." The statement hung in the silence of the bridge, a perfect, logical contradiction. Kalen felt the minds of his crew reeling from the implication. "Please help us understand," he sent back, his transmission colored with a genuine plea for clarity. "Your linguistic signature is that of the species known as human from the planet Earth, yet their technological level makes your existence impossible. Your assessment of humanity's current technological state is accurate," the voice replied with no hint of condescension. "The people of Earth in this present time cannot build this ship. They are, as you have observed, a young and divided species, still struggling with the infancy of their civilization." "Then who are you?" Kalen pressed, his mind racing. "Are you their protectors? Another species acting on their behalf?" There was a pause, a moment of consideration that felt as long as an era. Then the voice returned, its tone imbued with a new layer of something that Kalen could only interpret as a deep, resonant sorrow. "We are human." Another impossibility laid bare. Kalen felt his thoughts fragmenting. "That cannot be. It defies all known principles of technological development." It defies all asterisk linear principles, emissary. You are thinking in a straight line from past to present to future. We are an exception to that progression. To facilitate your understanding, we will transmit a visual representation. We ask that you receive it with an open mind. Before Kalen could respond, a new window opened on their main view screen. It was a holographic image, a human. It was a female of the species, clad in a simple, dark uniform that bore no rank or insignia. Her features were composed, her expression serene but etched with a deep, underlying exhaustion. Her eyes, Kalen noted, seemed to hold the weight of dying stars. She was not old in a physical sense, but her gaze was ancient. "I am the designated interface for this unit," she said, her voice now an audible, translated sound, smooth and low. "You may call me Captain Eva Rostova, though captain is merely a functional title. I am in truth more of a custodian." Kalen studied her image. She was so very ordinary, a simple bipedal organism of flesh and bone, and yet she was the voice of the impossible ship, the wielder of a power that could hold back the scourge. "Captain Rostova," Kalen began, forcing his vocal modulator to remain steady. "You say you are human, yet you also say that your people cannot build this ship. We do not understand." The human Rostova gave a faint, sad smile. "They cannot build it now asterisk. They were not ready, the scourge. We detected its approach across the timelines, a wave of extinction moving through the galaxy. Our predictive models were absolute. By the time it reached our sector of space, we would still be centuries away from the technology required to confront it. We would have been harvested, another silent, dead world." Kalen felt a cold dread crystallize within him across the timelines. The phrase was one of theoretical physics, of esoteric speculation. No one had ever weaponized it. "So you fled?" Kalen asked. "You are refugees from a future that was consumed?" "No," Rostova said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "We did not flee, we chose to act. Our future, the one in which humanity rises to become a starfaring civilization, the one where we might have joined your concordance as equals. It was a possible future, but not a guaranteed one. It was contingent on our survival. And so, our descendants in a future that was threatened with erasure made a choice. They could not send an army back through time. The paradoxes would be catastrophic. They could not send technology, for it would irrevocably contaminate our own development. So they sent something else. They sent an idea." She gestured to the space around her, and the holographic image expanded to show the interior of the Vigilance asterisk. It was not a bridge of consoles and screens, but a vast, empty space of softly glowing light. There was no crew, only her. "This ship," she explained, her voice filled with a reverence that was almost religious, "is not made of matter in the way you understand it. It is a projection, a conceptual construct. It is the distilled, perfected blueprint of the ultimate defensive weapon humanity would have one day designed, given enough time. Our descendants poured all their knowledge, their hopes, and their strategic brilliance into a single, cohesive concept. And then, using a temporal science we can barely comprehend, they projected that concept backward in time, anchoring it to a single human consciousness capable of stewarding it. They sent the warship that was never built." Kalen and his entire bridge crew were frozen in stunned silence. The name, it wasn't a nickname. It was a literal description, a ship made of an idea, a blueprint given form. "It fights, but it was never constructed," Kalen stated, the words feeling alien and heavy. "It exists, but it has no physical mass. This is a violation of the fundamental laws of the universe." "It is a negotiation with them," Rostova corrected gently. "The ship has a temporary, localized effect on reality. It convinces SB. Time that it is real, and in turn its weapons convince the scourge that they are being destroyed. But its existence is not free. It is powered by a terrible fuel, the potential of the future that created it." She looked directly at Kalen, her ancient eyes holding his. "Every shot it fires, every system it saves, every moment it continues to exist in this timeline, it consumes a piece of the future from which it was sent. My descendants, the brilliant, hopeful people who sent me here, are fading. With every battle, their timeline, their great civilization becomes less probable. They are sacrificing their own existence, bit by bit, so that we, their ancestors, might have a chance to live. I am the custodian of their final, desperate hope, and I am watching them die in the echoes of my actions." The revelation struck the bridge of the unwavering inquiry with the force of a supernova. This was not a weapon of conquest. It was a monument to sacrifice. The humans had not built a warship. They had forged an act of selfless love, a shield sent back through time to protect their own cradle at the cost of their own future. The silent, graceful ship outside was not a symbol of their power, but of their incredible, heartbreaking ethics. The scourge was a mindless force of consumption, a simple, brutal evil. But the humans. They had found a way to fight a monster by creating a miracle. and they were paying for it with the ghost of their own unborn greatness. Kalen, the veteran diplomat who had faced down warlords and negotiated with beings of pure energy, felt his composure finally break. The sheer, overwhelming scale of the human act was too much to process. The species they had dismissed as primitive, squabbling primitives, had just demonstrated a moral and philosophical depth that dwarfed even the most ancient traditions of the Concordance. They had looked upon their own extinction, and instead of raging against it, had found a way to save their past at the cost of their own future. We did not know, Kalen transmitted, his thoughts a chaotic swirl of awe, shame, and profound respect. The sacrifice it is beyond comprehension. It was necessary, Rostova replied, her voice steady, though a single tear traced a path down her cheek in the holographic projection. Now you understand, we are not a threat to you. We are a shield, a temporary fading shield. We fight to give our past, your present, a chance to unite, to prepare, for the scourge is relentless, and my ship is not infinite. The silence on the bridge was broken only by the soft hum of the life support systems. The mystery of the warship that was never built was solved. But in its place was a truth far more powerful and devastating, a truth that would force the Galactic Concordance to reevaluate everything they thought they knew about life, time, and the quiet, unassuming species called human. The return of the unwavering inquiry asterisk to the Glypton, throne world, sent a shockwave through the highest echelons of the Concordance. Emissary Kalen's report was delivered not as a dry, factual summary, but as a solemn, profound testimony. He stood once more before the conclave, his crystalline form seeming to radiate a new, humbled light. The holographic projector in the center of the chamber did not show tactical maps or sensor readings. It showed the face of Captain Eva Rostova, her weary, ancient eyes gazing out at the assembled delegates of 1,000 worlds. Kalen relayed her story, her explanation of the temporal projection, the conceptual nature of the vigilance asterisk, and the ultimate terrible sacrifice that powered it. When he finished, the great chamber, usually a place of resonant debate and chiming logic, was utterly, completely silent. The minds of the delegates, from the gaseous Lumina to the stoic Xylans, struggled to encompass the sheer scale of what they had been told. Their galactic society was built on the tangible, on resources, on fleets, on territory, on the hard physics of cause and effect. The human solution was something else entirely. It was a weapon forged from abstract ethics, powered by a paradox of self-erasure. It was an act of philosophy made manifest as a warship. The Lumina delegate, its form a turbulent, agitated swirl of violet and blue light, was the first to break the silence. This is a philosophical impossibility. To sacrifice a guaranteed future for a nascent past, to unexist so that one's ancestors might exist, it is a logic that inverts the very drive for survival. It is madness. It is not madness, chimed the Xylan Hierophant, its crystalline facets resonating with a tone of pure, cold admiration. It is a higher form of logic. The humans calculated the variables. Their own extinction was a certainty. The survival of their species, even in a primitive state, was a possibility. They chose the path that preserved the continuation of their essence, at the cost of their own temporal iterati. On they have weaponized hope. We, who build our fleets from mined asteroids and forged alloys, have never conceived of such a thing. Elder Xylos, who had listened in profound stillness, finally spoke, his voice a deep, resonating hum that seemed to shake the very foundations of the chamber. For cycles, we have viewed power as the ability to impose one's will upon the universe. The humans have shown us a different definition. They have shown us that true power lies in the willingness to sacrifice oneself for a principle. We underestimated them. We saw them as chaotic, primitive, and insignificant. We were fools. In their infancy, they have displayed a moral clarity that we in our ancient wisdom have forgotten. He turned his attention to the silent, watching delegates. The asterisk vigilance is not a threat. It is a gift bought at an unimaginable price. It buys us what we have lacked, time. Time to rally our fleets, to coordinate our defenses, to stand together against the scourge. But we cannot allow the humans to pay this price alone. Their sacrifice must not be in vain. It must not be a footnote in the history of our victory. It must be the foundation of it. The conclave erupted not in argument, but in a unified wave of assent, a chorus of resonating minds and shimmering lights. The shame of their arrogance was palpable, replaced by a surge of awe and a newfound sense of purpose. The human warship, the ghost they had feared, had become a symbol of something more. It was a moral compass for the entire galaxy. In the cycles that followed, the Galactic Concordance underwent a transformation. The petty squabbles and territorial disputes that had defined their politics for centuries were set aside. A unified military command was established. Fleets were mobilized not for conquest or defense of individual borders, but for a single, common cause. The Concordance fleets, guided by the tactical data provided by the Vigilance Asterisk, began to push back against the Scourge with a new, coordinated ferocity. The Vigilance Asterisk itself continued its lonely war at the forefront, its human custodian, Eva Rostova, now in constant communication with the Concordance High Command. She became a revered, almost mythical figure to the fleets she fought alongside. A ghost in the machine, a voice from a dying future, shepherding them with a wisdom and calm that belied the terrible burden she carried. An alliance was formally ratified. Humanity, the pre-stellar, unsuspecting species still living out their planetary infancy on Earth, were granted provisional membership in the Galactic Concordance. Protectors were dispatched to their system, a silent, invisible fleet of Xylan and Glypton ships that watched over them from the dark, ensuring no harm would come to the cradle of the beings who were, in another timeline, their saviors. They were protected from the Scourge, but also from the knowledge of what was being done in their name. It was decided by both Rostova and the Concordance that they were not ready for that truth. They needed to find their own way to the stars on their own terms. The war turned. The Scourge, for the first time in its recorded history, was not just halted, but actively rooted. System by system, the tide of darkness was pushed back, a combined force of Concordance material power and the conceptual might of the Vigilance, working in perfect, deadly harmony. A sense of hope returned to the galaxy. It seemed that the sacrifice of the future humans would be honored, their gamble a success. It was during the final offensive, in a campaign to cleanse the core worlds of a nebula once thought lost, that the great twist came. A Xylan science vessel, performing deep scans on the Scourge's biology and energy patterns, discovered an anomaly. The Scourge was not a homogeneous swarm. Its countless biomechanical entities were networked, a hive mind of voracious, simple instinct. But buried deep within their collective consciousness, hidden beneath layers of predatory static, was something else. It was a signal, structured, complex, and repeating. It was not a product of the Scourge itself, but something embedded within it, like a message carved into the shell of a mindless beast. Xylos and Rostova were linked in a private, quantum-entangled conference when the Xylan report came through. The holographic image of the human captain looked out from the non-space of her bridge, her expression, as always, one of weary calm. On a shared tactical display between them, the Xylan data was rendered into a visual form, a complex waveform, intricate and impossibly ancient. Our analysts are calling it the sub-signal, Xylos vibrated, his mind struggling to process the implications. It is not a command code, it is not controlling the Scourge. The pattern is repetitive, a loop. The linguists believe it is a warning. A warning? Rostova's voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence with chilling precision. From whom? We D. Oh, not no. The signal's complexity is orders of magnitude beyond anything we have ever encountered. It uses mathematical and physical constants that are theoretical. It seems to originate from a source that perceives more than 4 dimensions. The Xylan data scrolled across the screen, a stream of elegant, terrifying equations. But the message itself, once we filtered it through our most advanced decryption matrices, it is simple. It repeats 3 concepts over and over. Xylos paused, the weight of the discovery settling upon him. He looked at the image of the human, the woman who represented a future that was sacrificing itself to fight a monster, and he knew that the truth he was about to share would recontextualize everything. The first concept, he said, his voice low, is silence. The second is hiding. The third is a complex ideogram for a predator, not a simple predator like the Scourge, but a conceptual one. A hunter of civilizations. A reaper of thought. Rostova's serene expression finally fractured. A flicker of genuine, raw fear appeared in her ancient eyes. The Scourge all this time. It is not the fire, Xylos finished, the terrible truth locking into place. It is the smoke. The Scourge is not an invader. It is a refugee. It is a mindless biological plague, yes, but it is running from something, fleeing in a state of primal, instinctual panic across the galaxy. It consumes everything in its path because its fundamental programming is to replicate, to survive, to create more of itself, to outrun what is chasing it. The silence stretched between the Glypton elder and the human custodian. The war they had fought, the sacrifices made, the alliance forged, it had all been based on a false premise. They had not been fighting the ultimate enemy. They had been fighting the first wave of its victims. The signal is a warning, Rostova whispered, her voice barely audible. Left by whatever civilization the Scourge consumed last, a message in a bottle cast into a sea of monsters. Precisely, Xylos confirmed, a new, far greater dread seeping into his consciousness. And the energy signature of the subsignal, our astronomers have traced its origin point. A new image appeared on the tactical display. It was a map of their galaxy, a familiar spiral of stars and dust. But at its edge, in the vast, empty expanse of the intergalactic void, a single point of light began to glow, marked with a concordance danger symbol. "It comes from the void between galaxies," Xylos said. "From the great emptiness, and our long-range sensors, they are detecting something there, a disturbance, a shadow falling over the cosmic microwave background, something vast, ancient, and waking up." They had won their war. The scourge was being defeated. But their victory had only served to reveal the true nature of the darkness that lay beyond. They had been so focused on the monster at their door that they had never thought to ask what it was running from. Eva Rostova looked out from her impossible ship, her gaze fixed on the symbol of the approaching, true enemy. Her ship, the Vigilance Asterisk, the great sacrifice of her people, had been sent back in time to save humanity from the scourge. But its true purpose, it now seemed, was far, far greater. It was not the ultimate weapon. It was merely the first shield, a temporary defense against the herald of a much greater apocalypse. The warship that was never built had saved them from the shadow, only to show them the shape of the abyss from which it had been cast. A profound, shared understanding passed between the Glypton and the human. Their fear of each other had been replaced by a hard-won unity. Now that unity would be tested against a foe that hunted not worlds, but the very concept of life itself. The future of humanity had been sacrificed to give the present a fighting chance. Now, the future of the entire galaxy would depend on what they did with that chance. The real war, Xylos realized with a chilling certainty, was only just beginning.